Ask the Podcast Coach for November 23rd, 2024.
Let's get ready to podcast.
There it is. It's that music that means it is Saturday morning. It's time for Ask the Podcast Coach, where you get your podcast questions answered live. I'm Dave Jackson from theschoolofpodcasting.com, and joining me right over there is the one and only Jim Cullison from theaverageguy.tv. Jim, how's it going, buddy?
Greetings, Dave. Happy Saturday morning to you. Fall and winter is on. We're on the edge of winter. Are you feeling it? It's like it's almost here, right?
Yeah, we got a sprinkling of snow the last couple days, and you wake up. It's kind of like winter's warning shot. Like, hey, if you haven't dug the scraper out of your trunk, this would be a good time to do it. Yeah, that's and I'm not. I don't know. I don't ski, so I don't hate snow. I just when it becomes hard to like last night I was driving around. And it was at night. I sound old when I say this, but I don't like to drive in the dark when it's raining. But I don't like to drive in the dark when it's raining. And now you don't know, because it was in the 30s here. And I was like, oh, is that ice or is it, water? And it just makes you, you're like, oh, here we go. It's that time.
You gotta be careful.
Yeah.
You gotta be careful. But you know what's great on a cold winter's morning?
Oh, nothing better than a steaming hot cup of Java.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And that, of course, is brought to you by our good friend Mark over at podcastbranding.co. And the beautiful thing about Mark is, A, he's a podcaster, B, he is an award-winning graphic artist, but C, he lives and swims in podcasting. So you go to Fiverr and somebody might give you a piece of artwork that's rectangle, because you said, hey, I need a piece of artwork, my podcast. They don't know what the specs are. They don't know that it's supposed to be, up to 3,000 by 3,000 and under 500 kilobytes. You're going to get the wrong piece of artwork because you're using the wrong person. And the other thing is, you're going to look pretty, like really pretty or really awesome or really cool or whatever you're looking for. Remember, they're going to see you before they hear you. And Mark is going to take care of you. He's going to sit down with you one-on-one. You're not going to get that from some guy on Fiverr or some other graphic artist. So when you are ready to look good, well, again, Mark DeCoates over at podcastbranding.co is the only place that you want to go. Say it with me again, podcastbranding.co.
And, of course, big thanks to our good friend Dan Lefebvre over there, based on a true story podcast.com. And, Dave, during the holidays, this is the time you try new podcasts, right? You need something new, you're traveling, you're on the road, you're doing something different. This would be a great one to try. If you need something new, Casablanca, we talked about that last week, out there and available right now. If you need a new podcast to listen to, check out Dan. He's a great guy. Sponsored for a long time, has a great mug. Check it out today. Based on a true story, podcast.com. Dan, thanks for your sponsorship.
And Jim is running through a bunch of new stuff today, and we'll just jump into the toys. I was very happy. I will piggyback on yours, but what's going on in the land of Jim this morning?
Well, brand new. So the M4 came in, as Apple does. They overpromised. No, they underpromised and overdelivered. It was supposed to be here Thursday, got here Monday, which is kind of nice. So just from a specs perspective, I got the Apple Mac Mini M4, their newest version of it, 32 gigs of RAM on that. I did upgrade that to get that. I kept the same hard drive size as I had on my M1, which is a half a terabyte, 512. And it's got a new neural processor. I haven't messed with that part yet, so I've still got some work to do. But set it up Tuesday, did some sound checks on Wednesday, did a podcast on Thursday here with you guys today. It's actually sitting, so the M1's on the desk, the M4 is sitting right on top of it. Completely different profile, right? I mean, the M1 was like a flat pancake. The M4 is more like a Intel Nook. It's a little thicker. It's more like a really thick cheeseburger. That's kind of what It's got some. It's all USB-C. There's no USB-A ports on the thing. So if you're an old USB-A guy, like my camera and my audio device, those are still all kind of the traditional I shouldn't say traditional, but the old school A ports. You're going to need, it's got some USB-C or Thunderbolt 4 ports in it. Check out the specs. You can go to apple.com, check them out now. Reasonably priced, working pretty well. But whenever you change anything like this, you can see the box up here, by the way, if you want to put it up in the screenshot. Whenever you change something like this, then you got to go through. Yeah, there you go. Then you got to go through all of the. You can see the old box. There's the old box below it and the new box on top.
Very cool.
Yeah, you got to kind of go through and set all the presets. The setup was actually really, really easy. If you get a new iPhone, or I think even Android does this, you put your old phone down and you put your new phone next to it and you say, I have a new phone. And all the stuff just transfers over to it now, which is super cool. Okay, not like that with the Mac. But I was able to, I just took the Time Machine back up, plugged it in. Probably an hour and a half of setting that back up. All my apps were there. Handbrake worked all the presets were there. It worked exactly like I expected it to. Opened up, I do some editing in iMovie because it's just easy. Everything was there. That worked out really well. All the apps that I had purchased came over and were just there, of course, because that came from the Time Machine backup. Setting up a new PC, you don't get the opportunity to. You got to still log into your browser. You got to get. If you use a password manager, you got to log into that. So that there is some setup on some of those kinds of things. But so far, so good. I'm just kind of working out the kinks and making sure that you got to. I traded the old one in, so it's going to go back on Monday, right? So you got to kind of make sure you got everything off the old one. But a good upgrade, Dave. I think to go from the M1 to the M4, good upgrade. Probably out $800.
Yeah.
Something like that.
If you need ports, I have the from CalDigit.
Nice.
I have one of these, and it has 3 USB A's. What else do we got back here? Three Thunderbolts, and a Thunderbolt / USB 4. So it's these are all. I don't know if you can see the ports back there, but I got these because I have one of these already, and I was running out of ports, and I was like, okay, maybe I can do this and unplug some of this stuff and plug it into this one. And so I got that. But I was in the Apple store, and I went in there to buy the mouse, because the nice thing, if you now this is, of course, you pay the Apple tax on this to get an Apple mouse, but my Mac Mini tied right into it. So it didn't take up a port. So that was kind of cool. And while I was there, I have the new app. It's
nice.
New to me. I walked in, I said, hey, I know that like your latest watch, whatever it is, the 10 or the something, blah, blah, blah. Because I when I told them what my watch was, they're like, oh, wow, that still works? Kind of, it was old, like a 3 or a 4, whatever the watch was.
I have a 4. I still have a 4.
I think that's what I had. And I said, it's to the point where I have to charge this during the day now. And sometimes if I'm going to stay up late, I have to charge it like at dinner time too. And I go, I said, I don't need to check my heart rate. I don't need to, I've fallen and I'm like, I just need it to basically, I love that I can double authenticate on it. I love the fact that I can pause and change the volume, especially when I'm riding my bike to podcasts. I really don't use half the watch stuff. And they're like, oh, you need an SE. And it was, I don't know, 200 and something. I'm like, now we're talking. Like it's weird because you kind of go, hey, that's cheap. And I'm like, it's still $200. But anyway, and then they gave me $50 for my old watch because it was in really good shape. So,
oh, nice.
Yeah. But I don't use the sleep thingy because I've got my Aura ring, which is now going to be on my finger. It was charging. So yeah, so I am, Good. It's just one of those things where I am officially an Apple fanboy now. Like I will just, and I was thinking about it, like, and it's a cliche, and of course, until it's not, but it is kind of like you just plug it in and it works. Because the guy at the Apple store was amazing. He's like, oh, go into the watch, unpair it, and he's like, and now just basically go back and pair it. Oh, you point it at the watch, and somehow this magical thing happens on the watch screen. It's like, whoo, and then it's like your watch is like pairing, and then it's like, hey, do you want to do you want to restore your watch from the backup? And you're like, okay. And then like, poof, and you're done. And I was like, all right, well,
Yeah,
this is,
they've made that stuff very easy. They
yeah.
have made it very easy. Am I coming out of speakers, Dave, on your side? Do you know
No, I can turn down my headphones are right now
Oh,
even
I just
loud
getting
for
a
me.
little I just getting a little echo back on
Yeah,
that.
and I think if I get my mic closer, yeah, we should be the same volume. You're a little louder than
Okay.
I am. I saw
Okay.
somebody mention that early. So
Somebody had said that earlier. Um, I did notice when I rendered the video last night. I guess I did that. It was significantly faster. I mean, the M1 was a huge improvement
yeah,
on video rendering, and then of course the M4 is I would say gigantic. It's large. I mean, I didn't time it. I'd maybe say half the time. Now that's not scientific, but I in my podcast processing workflow, I get that going, so I do the video edit, I get that going. And while that's going, I just jump over and do something else. So it's not like I'm sitting there staring at it, waiting to finish to get it done. I've loaded the audio over to the transcription services already. Those are running to get the bits that I need. Then I have Auphonic do the show notes for me. I grab the short description from Auphonic's transcript, throw that in the Patreon account because I give my Patreon listeners early access to the full
oh
show.
nice.
So that's it, but they don't. The description I put in there, I don't want to spend a lot of time. I'm going through all of the processes. I don't want to spend a lot of time thinking about writing that. So I go 100% AI on that description. Just grab it. I don't think my Patreon people are reading it anyway. So just something. So there's a description in there, so they have some ideas and send it over to them. So, yeah. I mean, I think it'll put me in the next generation of equipment from Apple. Here's the real question though, Dave. And I asked my audience this on Thursday. Originally the M1 sat on, I have a little rack that sits off of the desk. So I put it on the rack. So I don't ever see it. It's kind of hidden out of the way. You never see it. The hard drive, the backup's over there. Now, this is smaller. It's got a significantly smaller footprint. It's taller. Oh, by the way, big controversy. The power button on the M4 is underneath. It's on the back and it's underneath. You have to kind of, unless you have super skinny fingers, if you're going to hit the power
Yeah.
button, you got to lift up your Mac to reach the power button in the back. Big controversy in the Mac world. People are losing their minds over this. In fact,
that's
a
oddly
buddy,
placed.
it is kind of weird. A buddy of mine makes gadget things with his CNC, and so he's already made a pedestal for it that has a cutout for the power button, so you can easily reach it. Dave McCabe is his name. I'll throw the link in so you can see this. Or he created a stand so you can have it sit upright so that the power button is reachable on the side. Pretty great. I'll throw those links in the chat here in just a few minutes. But so should I put it out of sight and put it back in the rack, or it's small enough I could put it on my desk? Chat room or in the comments on YouTube, what should I do? Should it hide it away? Put it on the desk? Dave, I'll ask you that question. What's your preference? Do you like to see it?
Mine is sitting on the desk, and now as I say this, I'm like, I think I've powered it down twice.
No, exactly. You never touch the power.
I never
button.
touched and it's got my hub on top of it, and on top of the hub is a hard drive. So I have this little baby pyramid sitting here. And if I think about it, I never touch any of those things. So I could have just basically under my desk found some sort of little bracket to where I could slide it in there and never see it again. And I would get, I don't know, however big a Mac Mini is back on my desk. Now I don't really, you guys have seen my desk. It's a mess. Right now it's covered in empty boxes for some reason.
Well, you just quit trying to be Bandrew.
That's it. Magic mouse. Yeah. So, I don't know. Here's the magic thing about the Magic Mouse is I can take with two fingers, I can swipe left and right, and it will do, if I have multiple pages open, it will do that. There are a couple other gestures you can do on it because I asked the guy, look, your mouse is $99. I go, what does it do that a normal mouse doesn't do? And the Apple guy actually laughed because he's like, I'm like, am I just paying the Apple
Yeah.
tax? I go, look, I'm going to buy it anyway. I said, so, he's like, no, there are a couple things it does that, you can't get on other things. So, Randy says he purchased the Apple, SE watch for his wife birthday. There you go. Good to go. Yeah. This is,
Chris says he's always pulling things in and out, and so it's the desk for him.
mm,
If you're, I guess if you were plugging things or doing stuff with it, you'd want it close to you.
yeah. Jeff does mention that because I was like, wait, where do you put the batteries in? On the Magic Mouse, it's on the bottom. And
Yeah.
the cable they give you is USB-C to Lightning. And I'm like, I don't have any USB-C things on my port. So I'm like, do I need another, so what I bought was a power brick, a battery backup that has a USB-C connection so I can power this thing up. Hopefully the battery lasts a while. I need to remember now when I go to bed to turn off my mouse. I don't know how long that's going to go. Chris says I'm always pulling things in and out. Yeah, it's so that could be it. It depends. Jeff has a Satechi stand and hub for his Mac Studio. I almost bought one of those. Also has an SSD enclosure. Almost bought one of those when I first got my Mac Mini. Daniel says I actually have two mic, a Logitech MX. This must be a different conversation. Max Master 3S for Mac. It's Bluetooth as my normal mouse. So we're talking mouses or mices. And then I have a trackpad on my left that I use only for gestures. There you go. So we're set for hardware. The Black Friday sales have already started. Captivate. I need to put this out someplace in public. Captivate has a deal right now that if you buy a year, you don't have to pay till March. So you basically get 3 months free. Heartbeat has, that's my little community tool that I use. 6 months, 30% off. MailerLite is 33% off. I'll put these in the show notes, which doesn't do anything for the live people here. But I do like the fact, although it's not working right now, that I can program in, hey, Magic Mouse, use my right mouse button. But it's not working right now. I'm right clicking the heck out of my link here. Maybe that's a Heartbeat thing. I don't know. But it's one of those things when it comes to Black Friday, you do kind of want to ask yourself, do I really need this? Like this? Because I've bought stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Like every time I walk by, and I think we talked about this last week. When you walk by these giant TVs in Walmart, and they're like $200-300 when they used to be 2,000-3,000 years ago.
Yeah.
And I'm like, and then it just dawns on me, I'm like, I don't know that I have a wall big enough in my living room for that thing. Like it would take up, 25% of my house. I'm just like, yeah, that's not going to work. Are you sharing a screen for something?
I am. Yeah. I was going to show you that stand on the Mini if you throw it up really quick.
Right.
That's not what we're looking for.
Oh, here we go. Well, this looks like Etsy. I'm just going to drag it over for now.
Yeah, that's fine. So I had a buddy who builds these. These are these stands, and he sells them. He sells them through Etsy. But you can see here you got a vertical stand, little cutout there. I'm assuming that's a headphone jack. And then we talked about that power button. Let me see if I can see that picture. There's a picture of it where it sits. See now how the power button is on the back. That's the bottom of it. So if you're setting it down on the bottom, that's what it looks like. And then this is the pedestal stand. So you can see here, it just gets the Mac up off the desk. And if you go around to the back, there's down here, there's the opening. So you can get your finger in there to turn that on and off. I will have to admit, when I was monkeying around with converting and backing up and doing all that other stuff, I did hit because I was lifting up the box to put a HDMI cable in or whatever. I did hit the power button twice. And on the Mini, on the M1, I hit the power button a couple times as well. So, there's small boxes, they're power buttons. I'm kind of used to them being on the front. Just to be honest, on a PC, everything's on the front,
Yeah.
kind of
Well,
deal. But
what's weird is on the Roadcaster, I still hate the fact that it's the micro mini SD card and it's on the back of it. But I've had this thing for a couple years now. I can take that card and just go input. I know exactly where it is. Insert sex joke here. But it's just one of those things where, like, after a while, you figure out where it is. Yeah. Chris says, but Dave, just imagine watching the Browns beat the Steelers in 10 inches of snow on an 85-inch. Here's the funny thing. I figured out I am magic. I didn't know I had this power. If I don't watch the game, the Browns will win. Because I didn't even I turned it on in
boy.
the living
Oh,
room
boy.
and then was in my
Yes.
office and I walked by at halftime. I'm like, wait, we're winning. I'm like, that's all right. There's plenty of time for the Browns to lose because they always find a way. And then they didn't. So my favorite was our quarterback, James and Winston something. He sounds like Thurston Howell. He has like two last names for names. But he's a big Jesus guy. And you could ask him like, well, what were you thinking when you threw that interception? And he'd be like, the Lord gives me power for all things. Like, oh, wow, it's going to snow tonight. I am, according to Ecclesiastes, like he answers everything in a verse. And I'm like, so
Wow.
the media's caught on to this because it makes for some very bizarre interviews. So they're all like, get a mic on Jameson. So that's always fun. But yeah, the guy was pleased as punch because he's from Florida. He's like, I'm going to play football in a football town in football weather, and it was kind of crazy. But yeah, so so I'm looking. I don't know about you, but I am already a little burnt out on my inbox, just going crazy with stuff. And Black Friday isn't really officially till next week, so when that goes, yeah. Chris says Jameis, that's it. Jameis Winston audio clips are everything. Yeah, he's a very interesting dude, but that's kind of the good thing. You want to stand out and go that route. I was looking for questions this morning. I think we just answered this a couple weeks ago, but that's the way it works on Ask the Podcast Coach. How do y'all stay consistent? He says, with releasing episodes. Been running my podcast for 3 months now, and man, the weekly schedule is kicking my butt. And I thought I would bring this up because we were talking about this week at the School of Podcasting, like when you start to get a little crispy. Between my day job, editing, which takes forever, and trying to book guests who keep rescheduling, I'm struggling to stay consistent. Right that's to me, I'm like, okay, that is true. People reschedule. Start out thinking I can handle it all solo, but clearly need to change something. What's your system? Do you batch record? Do you hire an editor? Would love to hear what works for you because right now I'm about to lose it. Jim, do you have a lot of people reschedule?
That's a good question. We do our scheduling a little bit different, and so no. Rarely do I get a reschedule, but we do a lot of upfront work on the scheduling to begin with. So if I'm going to book somebody, this is on the Gallup side of things, I will say, hey, let's get together for a call, and I'm going to tell you what you're going to do. I'm going to tell you why you're on this thing, and we're going to talk about what we're going to talk about. Then if you agree to that, we will set a date, and you're going to pick the date. So tell me what that is, and we'll get it done. That, for most people, that works perfectly fine. Where I do find it to be a problem is I hate to say this publicly, a bigger deal for the person who thinks they're a big deal, or the bigger deal they are, the more they reschedule. And it's just one of those, it's crazy. The really important, I'm putting that in air quotes, the really important popular people of the world, they'll triple and quadruple book things. And then at the last minute be like, oh yeah, well, Howard can't make it because something else has come up. What it means is a more important thing than you has come up, right? That's what that means. And now we need to move it. And you don't have any choices. It's not like you can say, no. We planned this thing. They're not giving you that choice. There's no consideration that's given. They just say, yeah, we can't do this anymore. So and that's kind of why I don't like doing high profile guests, because they're kind of a pain. I hate to say
They can
that,
be.
but
Yeah, they're busy.
yeah, they're kind, and I don't know if you get that much value out of it, just to be honest. I mean, yeah, everybody wants to see this and that. I'm not a big fan of popular people, but it just is. So anyway, so there's that goes into it. But the way we do it, we don't. But I get it. Listen, there's a lot of things to do. If you're going to do podcasting, it's like any other job. You got to be hungry all the time for it. You just have to, because what it really means is other things in your life have gotten more important, or have you're struggling with prioritizing your podcast. And anytime there's lots, I said this a couple weeks ago, there's lots of hours in the day. I would probably say you're less busy than you think you are in that, and you're choosing to do some other things because they're more fun than to really grind it out on your podcast. That's not a popular opinion, but I'm going to say it. I just think I think we waste a lot of time. I guess that's what I'm saying. Most of us waste a lot of time.
Well, Ashley, Carmen, I think is her last name. She writes for Bloomberg on the podcasting space, and she did a article how maybe the podcast interview, like it's been done. Like you really,
That's
you
true. That's true.
the fact,
Yeah.
but in terms of how do you stay consistent, we'll be able to, if it's your jam, because I know Jim is not a fan, but if you can do a solo show, no scheduling needed. All you need is content and a microphone, and you are good to go. And then what we're talking about at the School of Podcasting is, in some cases, maybe you've added other things. Maybe now you're doing audiograms and this and that and YouTube, and you're like, man, I can't keep up. All right, well, how were you doing when you were just audio? Well, it was okay. Okay, well, then cut back on some of the stuff you added, or outsource it if you want to. And so Todd the Gator says, I started going live, and it's amazing how much less editing you have to do.
Yes.
Yeah, it's either less editing, or in our case, more editing, because we don't know what we're going to say on this show. We have an idea, we know where we're going to go, but it's not like I've practiced my answers here. So we talk like normal people talk on this show. And so
but you choose to edit it. You choose to do that, right? I mean, you wouldn't. I don't think you'd have to for what we do most weeks. There's some moments where you're like, okay, yeah, but I don't think this show should require that much editing for you to do. And I'm a big believer in live too. This is a battle I have at work sometimes. Is we go live and then like, oh, well, there's only 10 people there, and I'm like, that's not why we do it. We do live because it makes for better interviews. I think guests are better when they know they're live. I think it tightens people up a little bit. I think they get a little bit sharper when they know that it's live. Maybe the problem with you and me is we don't get those same nerves anymore with this group, because it's the same 35 people every single week. We're pretty comfortable with them. But I think live makes for better. I do. I believe that to be true.
Yeah. And one of the people that was kind of talking about it, and I don't think he'd care if I bring it up here, is Ralph. He's usually in the chat room from AskRalphPodcast.com. He's done a daily video show for a year. And I was like, dude, that's a lot. And it was funny as we kind of talked about it. In the end, he's like, we brought up something that you don't see, but it's definitely there. And that is, if you've been doing a podcast for a year or even a month and you're only doing weekly, when you do something over and over, you get better at it. And so he's probably better at telling stories. He's probably better at, all these other things of just creating content and putting it out. I know anytime I'm ever asked to do some sort of improv, like somebody's like, hey, Jackson, get up there and do that. And I'm like, what? So you are better at that. And I think the other one is, just because we work in technology, is I think we're better at not sweating the small stuff. Yeah. Because there are times when we're like, wait, well, hold on. Like we've had times when I forgot to press record and I'm like, all right, well, I'll just use the YouTube audio. And yes, it's not going to be as good, but is it listenable? Absolutely. And you're like, all right, that's good enough. It'll work. So I think that's definitely a skill that, just again, because you get to use that skill more than you want to, but you do. And in the end, Ralph was kind of like, well, it's fun. He enjoys doing it. And I'm like, well, why would you stop yourself from doing something you enjoy unless, because he's doing a daily show, I always say, if it's hurting you physically, whether it's, the mental stress, or you've decided to, like, I'll sleep when I'm dead, that's never a good answer. Don't do that. Or if your, friends and family are like, Daddy, will you take me? No, Daddy's got a podcast. No, that's not a good thing, because they're only little for a little bit of time. I'm like, that's when you cut back. But if you're not hurting your health or your relationships and you're having fun, why would you stop doing something fun? And in the end, that's what Ralph's like, yeah, I do kind of enjoy this. I'm like, well, there you go. So, yeah, and it is your show. If you want to change anything about your show, realize some people are going to be happy about that, whatever it is. And some people are like, oh, you don't do that segment about where you talk to your mom, or you don't do, like, whatever it is. And so, some people are going to like it and some people won't. So Jody says what she does with her interviews is she does a 60-minute episode. They're split into two. So when she interviews somebody, she's getting 2 episodes out of it. So, that's great use of the time. They were talking about Black Friday. Jeff, I'm going to do this, Jeff, when I get off the call today, if I can remember. Jeff C. says he had a spot in his last email, and he said, if you want to opt in to any Black Friday updates, click here to get on probably some sort of separate list or whatever. And he was surprised at the number of people who did. So as much as we kind of like, because if you were on last year's list, you're definitely going to get this year's list, plus any other new things that you've, signed up for. Tim said, I have a coupon from AppSumo because I've been a customer for a year or two. Yep, I got that as well. Any suggestions for software that can help me with project management? The thing I use, well, it's not an AppSumo. I've been using Motion. I don't remember. It's not motion.com. Probably if you Google like Motion, maybe .ai, because they say it's a virtual assistant. It is pretty handy. It gets, at times, the screen gets a little, if you have a lot of stuff, which is what I did. I just put in everything I wanted to do. And it was interesting. I took my sister voting, and my sister had not prepped at all. And it took her about 45 minutes to vote. And I was sitting there, and rather than like getting upset or frustrated, I just looked at Motion in my phone, and it was like one of the things on my to-do list was listen to audiobook. And I was like, oh, I can do that in line. Click, and off we go. So it's pretty handy. It is not cheap. It's 30 something a month unless you go yearly. So I'm praying they have a Black Friday deal, because I've been using it. But the tool I use for, and it depends on what you want your CRM to do, is I wanted something to keep all the notes about people. So, students of the School of Podcasting, or I have them categorized. So either students, their associates, which are their podcast consultants, and vendors. And so that way I can see what I said to them the last time I did that. And the app I use for that, and this is its real name, is Less Annoying CRM. And it's because almost every CRM, do I have a quick link for this? Less Annoying. No, you got to type right. Maybe I don't. Yes, I do. There we go. Supportthishow.com/less annoying CRM, I guess, is my link. Anyway, every CRM wants to put people in funnels, and it's very sales related, which makes sense. That's what a lot of them for. That's not what I need. So if you're just looking for something to, keep track of people and what they said, then that's my favorite. And it's $15 a month if you don't have a team. If it's just you, that's that. So, Jim, do you have anything for keeping track of people or projects or?
Yeah, I think Monday is a tool. It's a service, but I think Mondays, is it Monday? I think it's just called Monday.
Yeah.
And it's a project management tool. I've seen some. I haven't used it. I can't recommend it from that standpoint. But I know some folks who have, and they say it works pretty well for them. So that's another option to look at.
Yeah, people are saying we're having the discussion of editing in the chat room here. Don't over edit. Better to sound like you, sound in person. Yeah. Get better at succinct being live. Yeah. Ralph is in the chat room, says he likes his live show. Dan from Based on a True Story podcast. If I know a podcaster is recorded live, I don't expect as much editing. I don't even mention they recorded live, though. If they don't mention that they recorded live, I expect it to be edited more. Maybe we need to do the Laverne and Shirley, you know?
This is
Ask the
recorded before a live audience.
Shamil, yeah,
Are we Laverne and Shirley? Is that what you're saying?
I've
Are
never
you
drank.
Laverne? You're Laverne then for sure.
I could
Not, and
never.
I'm Shirley.
Has anyone ever tried milk and Pepsi? That sounds like the most.
Ugh.
Yeah.
It's
So
been 1,000 years since I've seen that.
yeah.
Show. Yeah.
Daniel says, I'm burning so much to get the audacity to podcast rolling again. I've been so focused on podagement. Yeah, I'm making up new words, podgagement, and another important thing called being a dad. Yeah, there again. When your podcast is costing you your relationships, that's when it's time to do that. By the way, podgagement is, Thursday we recorded, I think it was Thursday. Yeah, we recorded a new episode of the Future Podcast. There's some really cool things coming down the pike at podcast. So if you're a person that was into Chartable, and we can't really find, a good replacement, and you're dying to know, am I number 118 or number 21? I can't go to bed until I know where I am on the charts. That is coming in Podgagement. So, what else is going here in the chat room? Ralph says, I was letting the survey results get to my head and also my financial analysis of costs, and said, well, financial analysis, Ralph, comes pretty natural to you. So that's a norm. Instead of just seeing it as my mission field and a hobby that I enjoy. Yeah, I've never had somebody go, so you ride your bike every Sunday? And I go, yeah. You making any money at that? I've never had anybody ask me that. But yet, if you say you have a podcast, people want to know if you're getting that, sweet, sweet podcast money. Are you the next Joe Rogan? Daily sports history. I started out with 7 days a week. If I had a nickel for every person that started off, well, I started 7 days a week. Then kids happened. Again, I love kids, but they are the arch nemesis to podcasting. And now Monday through Friday. And I'm having more success and less stress. That right there is what you're looking for. It's your show. You can change it to fit your life. Yeah, because what are they going to do? Not pay you anymore? That's it. I'm not going to listen to your free podcast. So, yeah, it's yours. Do whatever you want. A lot of people make a living on curating deals on the internet. There's a value in saving people time and money. Yep. And also realize, I think I mentioned this last week. There was this blonde actress, and you would recognize her if you saw her, but I don't know her name. But she's on a podcast, and it's a comedy podcast. And she mentioned how, their job is to be not boring, but it's not political. It's just very light entertainment to stop you from falling asleep. That's about as much. And she goes, some people need that. They just want something simple to, help them, Calgon, take me away, and help them eliminate that. What's going else? Let's see. We got hosting. Captivate is excellent. If you go to the schoolofpodcasting.com right now, I think it's my next to the last blog. In fact, it's probably going to be my next episode. I spent a lot of time looking into media hosts. And, Daniel and I use Captivate for the show we do together, the Future Podcasting. We love how Captivate supports the Podcasting 2.0 features. And if you're into Podcasting 2.0, then you got to throw in Blueberry. And, I did hear the latest episode of Podcasting 2.0. And I've mentioned on this show that a lot of that streaming Satoshi thing was based on this thing called Albi. And Albi has basically changed their business model and just can't do what they used to do. And they are looking into now tapping into the Strike app, which is another financial kind of app. And that's sounding promising, but everybody in that space is a little bummed that we went pretty deep in a direction the whole time going, hey, isn't this going to be centralized? Isn't the whole point to be not central? This sure looks like it's centralized, and we did it anyway. And then that one thing kind of went, yeah, we're not doing this anymore. And we all went, huh? Yeah. Chef Robert says, I've just launched 17 self-paced lessons with 8 simple recipes called the Happy Diabetic Cooking Academy. Looking for ideas to promote. I would start a podcast. That would be my first one, which he's already got. He's got the Happy Diabetic. Newsletters are good. I have, did I talk about builds in the last episode? or UTMs. I think I did. If you go to, let me show you what. We'll just do this one.
Say it again. Just say it again.
Yeah,
People didn't listen last
Yeah, people don't listen to you. Where is my screen share? Here we go. All right, so I have, first of all, I used text expander, so I type in #build, and it takes me to usefathom.com/UTM-builder. So if I was sending people to ask the podcast coach, I would say, okay, here's where I want you to go. So there's a field that says your base URL, which means where do you want to send people? So I go, hey, ask the podcastcoach.com. And maybe the source is a newsletter. So I go newsletter. And then some of the stuff I'm just going to skip. But the campaign, maybe I did a newsletter about media hosts. So I type in media hosts. So I kind of know which newsletter sent people here. And then there are all sorts of things you can use here if you're doing keywords or whatever, or wherever the link is maybe. But usually I just use one or two. Usually it's the link, it's show notes or newsletter or app, or in some cases chapters if I've put a special link in a chapter. And then I come down here and go copy. And all this stuff has question marks and it doesn't mess with anything. But when you then go into your stats, now I use Fathom stats because they're ridiculously easy to understand. I can come down to the bottom, and just after doing this for like a week, now again, I'm not getting a ton of stuff, but at least I know where things are coming. So I can see that I got 12 people from an article I did about what are replacements for Blog Talk Radio, hence the BTR. Podcast hosts, I had 13 people come from that article that I just mentioned. And this is the one that always drives me nuts. In this month, I've had 3 people come to my show from my signature. Now, that's not a lot, but it took once to put my link in my signature, my email. And every month I have people coming to my website from my signature in my email address. If you do not have your website address in your signature, that is so low-hanging fruit. And then here I've got 17 people from Facebook, LinkedIn, my signature again, Substack, and Threads. So it just takes, that's why I make that link now. So I can always go to that link and do it. It takes 2 seconds. This one, so email, LinkedIn, and a post. So I need to get maybe a little more consistent with when I'm naming these things. And yeah, I had 3 people from my episode on duckpin bowling. And so if you're wondering, like what is working? Like, does it make any sense to post on Threads? Does it make any sense to post on such and such? Well, there's one way, and I think we talked, it's urchin tracking something, whatever UTM starts for. And I literally just in the last 2 weeks started, like, every time I go to Twitter, I'm like, oh, wait, hold on. Let's go back and put some of that UTM chocolatey goodness in there and see what happens. And it's just giving me an idea of like, well, should I be posting on Twitter? I don't know. I haven't seen a single hit from that. So, maybe that's, I'm on Twitter. Here's a novel idea. Apparently people have forgotten this. And I still call it Twitter and probably will call it Twitter. I know it's X, but I'm old. So, there is a feature on there. Elon did not get rid of it. It's called blocking people. So if there are people over there saying things you don't like, maybe instead of leaving, maybe just block them. And that way we all don't end up with 30 different social platforms that we have to post on. So like, oh, well, Johnny doesn't like so-and-so because they said booger. So I got to go over to Blue Sky. And then I got to go over to Threads because, Cheryl doesn't like, and I'm going like, ugh, just block people. Jeez Louise. To me, I'm just like, but. And have you heard what's going on with Blue Sky now?
Well, it's growing, you mean?
Well, it's growing because everybody is, the mass exodus are like, well, yeah. Elon is a poopy butt, so I'm going to Blue Sky. Yeah, well, now everybody is following them. All the trolls. Do you think that's going to stop a troll? So there's either A, there's trolls have followed them, and B, more people are reporting things to be pulled down because in some cases that audience is a little more sensitive to words and, they don't believe in the sticks and stones. And look, you believe with whatever you want to believe, but
listen, stop it, people. Stop it. Stop it.
I love your
God. Dude, if I have to come back there, if I have to stop this car and come back there, stop it.
Dude, I love I love. Did you do this in AI? This
Oh,
Laverne and Shirley?
the
Yeah.
Laverne and Shirley, and then
It-
and then someone had me do Welcome Back, Kotter too.
Mr.
That's the
Carter.
next one.
Oh my God. Back when John Travolta talked
Okay,
like this.
so for the audio folks, there we were talking Laverne and Shirley, and
Yeah.
somebody in chat said something about that. I said,
No, I see.
so I asked AI, hey, would you write a song for Dave Jackson and I for Ask the Podcast Coach to the tune of Laverne and Shirley, and what's that? What's the original tune on that? It
Dun,
is
dun, 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 dun,
Making Our
dun,
Dreams
dun,
Come
dun,
True.
dun,
Yeah,
dun,
yeah,
dun,
making our
dun.
dreams come true.
We're
So,
gonna
and then someone said, "How about Welcome Back, Cotter?" And I said, "Okay." So we have the first chorus, pre-chorus, and chorus, or first verse.
Nice.
Anyways, the gimmickry and gadgetry of ChatGPT. I'm
There,
not sure. I mean, it's fun. I had some folks wanted to do poems in it, and yeah, I guess I don't know. There's so many other smart things it can do.
yeah,
Rewriting lyrics for. I mean, it's a good party trick, but I don't
that's
know if
it.
it's.
And
that
Daniel J. Lewis says the mass letter exodus. Get it?
great.
All right, I like it. I mean, he's here all week. Speaking of AI, this came to us via the our good friend Craig over at AI Goes to College. And if I do this, it's lex.page. And so you can see where this is where I started that article. And what's kind of cool about it is if I can get some of these 80 million windows from Ecamm out of my way, over here, you can ask for title ideas. It's basically, again, like everything is, it's got some sort of GPT kind of, technology going on, but you can have these checks and you can have it check for grammar, brevity, cliches, read a bit. And by the way, apparently I am the cliche king. When I hit that, it almost brought the whole site down, I think. Passive voice, confidence, citation. So confidence would, if you're like, I think it's this, they're going to be like, well, do you or do you not? But here's what's interesting. It's free. And they keep adding more and more stuff to it. So could I do this in ChatGPT? Sure, absolutely. This is free. And then if you want to upgrade, there are a few other features that it will check. But I was pretty impressed because it's meant to do one thing right. Like, you're not going to ask this thing, what's the best microphone under $100? This is, and they even have a mode on it where you can tell it to, it's like focus mode, and it turns like everything off. There is an Ask Lex option where you can say, okay, based on what I've written, could I do? And you can ask it this way. So it's $12 a month if you pay, but the free version is what I did this in. And Craig had talked about it, and I came over here, and this is where I just kept going and going on what is a media host and what does it do? Because I was like, we always kind of go, what's the best media host? We always go, well, whoever, Captivate, Libsyn, Blueberry, Buzzsprout, whoever your favorite is. And I was like, but it always, because it's a podcast question, comes back to it depends. And so I thought, well, instead of saying, here's who I like, let's explain what a media host does. Because the fun thing is, so many of them say, oh, sign up with us and we will help you get your show in Apple and Spotify and iHeart and blah, blah, blah. And we give you statistics. And that's kind of like me going, hi, I'm Dave. I'll be your waiter tonight, and I'll be taking your order and bringing your food. And I'm like, yeah, that's what a waiter does. You know what I mean? So when they're like, hey, we will give you stats. Duh. Like, so, but I get into like, what is dynamic content and some of the cool things that Buzzsprout does, and Blueberry has like the vid to pod feature, and Captivate has a lot of cool stuff in it. I'm just like, here's what these features do. What do you want your web host to do? Because some people, they don't even know what dynamic stuff is. And then I'm like, well, how do you plan on, if they want to make money with your podcast? And again, you don't have to, but I'll always ask, somewhere down the road, I want to make money with this. Like, okay, well, let's talk about that. How's that? Well, I could see doing coaching or webinars. I'm like, okay, well, you could do dynamic stuff for that to promote your webinars. And they're like, oh, I didn't even thought about that. So it's just one of those things to think about. But that's, if you want to play with it, it's free. And that's the only thing that had me worried about is I'm like, wait a minute, because I just did a 2,000 character article for free. and it was actually pretty cool. It's not that expensive, but I could see where people go, you can do this in GPT for, you're paying your $20. Why pay an extra 12 for this? So right now I'm just on the free plan, but it's another example of when you give good content on your podcast, whatever your show is, and people test your knowledge. So like right now I just said, hey, this Lex thing is pretty cool. It's very simple. And, you click a button and it checks stuff for you. So that's what Craig said to me. I went over and went, you know what? He's right. So when Craig says something else, I'm going to go, that guy seems to know what he's talking about. He was right last time. Here's a great example. Jim, did you happen to watch the Mike Tyson fight yet?
No, I haven't.
Yeah.
Just clips on YouTube.
Well, the fun thing was there was a lot of buildup, and I did a whole episode on why people watch that thing because we don't know what's going to happen next, and Mike is very unpredicted. But in the end, if you think about it, the actual content, so if Jake Paul had another fight, and now he's fighting whatever, Santa Claus or somebody that you're like, wait, you're going to beat up another old man? But if Jake Paul had another fight, and it was some I don't know that I would buy a ticket. Because his content, yes, there was a great buildup, great marketing, all sorts of stuff. But in the end, the actual content was pretty meh. In the end, I kind of liked it. I thought it ended in a classy way. But I don't know that I would watch another Jake Paul fight because in the end, the actual content was like, all right, this is not what I wanted. I didn't know where it was going to go, so I can't really complain. But in the end, it wasn't that entertaining. Once you got to round 2, you're like, oh, I see where this is going to go. And so you when you deliver, it's your content that makes people come back and that builds that trust. So I trust Craig from AI Goes to College. I'm not sure I'm going to trust Jake Paul, especially when it comes to boxing stuff. And that's where I think people get confused if they go, well, if I try something new, nobody's, what if I, cheese off somebody? Well, usually, here's a good question for you, Jim. When you read a book, how many chapters have to be meh before you don't finish it? Or are you a kind of person that always finishes my dad would finish every book, even if he hated every page of it. I'm like, really?
Yeah, I don't like reading to begin with. That's not one of my favorite things. So, but I mean, if I'm in the first chapter and it's not holding me, I'm kind of done at that point. It's fast. Listen, videos are even faster. If I go to a movie and it's bad, well, I drove out there, I paid the ticket, I got popcorn. I'm gonna probably sit through a bad movie. But YouTube, I mean, I've seen a few where they've started and they're 3 seconds in. I'm like, yeah, I'm not interested in this. I know where this is going.
That goes back to, they always like to say, well, humans don't have, they have a very short attention span. And I totally disagree with that. I think our meter for recognizing things that are going to waste our time has grown exponentially. I was in I went to the movies. I bought this pass now where I can see as many movies as I want in a month. And so the guy that was in Succession, Macaulay Culkin's brother, who unfortunately in my head will always be Macaulay Culkin's brother. I forget what his actual name is. Kieran, maybe something. Loved him on Succession. And the guy that played Zuckerberg in the one Facebook movie. So 2 actors that I liked. But in the end, so I go to see this movie, and it is about 2 cousins. One is introverted, one is extroverted, whose grandmother has died, and they go to Poland to see her house, right? That's the premise. So you're thinking, and the hijinks ensues, right? I am 40 minutes into this movie, and nothing has changed. They've made it to Poland. Things have had a couple little wrinkles, but there's no big transition. And I remember thinking, and this is where the book's story-worthy, it ruins you for movies because I know there's going to be a transition. I know there's going to be something happening. And they had one little, oh, you didn't know that moment, and it wasn't worth sitting in a movie for 90 minutes. And I was like, wow, there was no story there. It's like they went to Poland, and then they came home. The end. And you're like, what? So I I knew about 40 minutes in, I'm like, okay, here comes the big reveal. Here's the big, like, oh, what's going to happen next? And there wasn't any. And I was like, oh, okay. Like at one point, they missed their whatever, get off the train here thing. They missed their stop. And I was like, oh, here we go. Hijinks. No, they caught up right on the next train. I was like, so yeah, I think we're better at identifying not great content than because here's my thing when they go, oh, we all have shorter, it's getting shorter. We only have 4 milliseconds of a attention span now. I'm like, then why do we have the word binge? Why does the word binge exist? Because I just binged The Diplomat on Netflix, and at the end of every episode, and it makes me mad, but it's like the last 15 seconds, something will happen that you're like, now I got to watch the next episode. So, and in every episode, there's something that comes along and you're like, oh, what's going to happen next? Ooh, there's a big reveal, blah, blah, blah. So story is always important in some way. Dan says, to Jim's point, the amount we invest into something can determine how long we endure it. Yep, that's true. Clicking play on YouTube isn't as much as an investment as buying a movie ticket. Yeah. I mean, did anybody watch, wasn't there a part 2 to Tiger King? Wasn't there like a follow-up or something?
I hope not. Part 1 was bad.
Yeah, but I remember the first one and thinking, why am I watching this? Because at first you're like, well, everybody was talking about it. But there comes a part where you're like, what was the one thing I just kept watching? It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. And you will either love that show or you will not. It's very weird. It's very strange. It's dark. I love it. But after about, I think let's say there's 7 seasons. I'm 5 seasons in, and I realized that you could just name this show Crazy People Yelling at Each Other. Because every episode, it's crazy people yelling at each other. And I was like, I am 5 seasons, I'm 5 seasons in. I'm going to watch, I have to do the gauntlet. I'm going to make it through, because I don't know if that show's still on, but it's been going on forever. And it just gets weirder and darker. And I was just like, okay, here's another episode of somebody being really weird. And, but I had 5 seasons in. So, if you've seen The Godfather, then you got to watch Godfather 2. And then halfway through Godfather 3, you're like, this isn't very good. And you're like, yeah, I got to watch it though. Yeah, that's a great point, Dan. I like that. Justin Blackett says, linking forward to the next episode is so important for that reason. I wish I could do this. I wish I knew what my next episode was. My buddy Harry Duran over at Podcast Junkies does this brilliantly. And every time he does it, I go, I should be doing that. And that is, he will start off like, hey, welcome to if I did my Harry Duran, hey, welcome to Podcast Junkies. I'm Harry Duran. So glad that you're here. And he will say, if you missed the last episode, we had a brilliant conversation with Jim Collison. Talking about home gadget geeks and robo vacuums. Today, we're talking with so-and-so about such and such. And then at the end of the show, he'll go, hey, thank you so much for listening. In our next episode, we're going to be talking with so-and-so about such and such. So in one episode, you've heard about 3 different episodes. So that if you want to follow the show, just go to his website and click on follow. And I was like, that is so easy to do if you know what the next episode is. And I can never figure out what the next episode is. I always have 4 ideas, and I don't know until it's Sunday after church that I go, okay, what am I talking about today?
You could though, Dave. I mean, you could change your process to say, hey, okay, so we're in November, right? So you could say, okay, before December starts, I'm going to brainstorm 4 weekly ideas for December, right? You could have those out there. Now, could you change them? Sure. You could still change them, but you could, that little extra step of pre-planning. You just choose, like, because the environment is so dynamic, and sometimes people feel like, man, I don't want to lock myself into 4 weeks of advanced stuff.
Yeah.
So it's not right or wrong. It's just how you choose to do the planning. You could easily plan out all of December and have that available. I also feel like Harry's recording in a room where someone's sleeping. And he doesn't want to wake them up. Have you never noticed? Okay, I'm going to talk to you like this because I think they're going to wake up. Don't wake them. Don't say anything though. Wake up.
I always love. I think James Cridlin did one from a plane, even maybe, and he was like, flying over New Auckland. This is pod news. And I was like, what? It's like, wow.
Yeah,
It's kind of cool.
you're like, are you in a place? Are you hiding from someone? Is someone chasing you?
They're in the bathroom. I'm locked in here. This is pod news. Yeah. The newsletter is better. So yeah, exactly. Randy says the topic can get me to click. Yep, but the content can't keep me unless the people or the person delivering are likable. And I find myself going back to people. I enjoy them, even if I'm not that interested in the topic. Yep, they come for the content. They stay for the host. So be likable, doggone it. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back is, it's not a question. We'll hear from Ralph, our good buddy Ralph from AskRalphPodcast.com. But the one thing I always want to click on is my awesome supporters. You can see them by going to AskThePodcastCoach.com/awesome. And there we go. The show is brought to you by the School of Podcasting, where you have unlimited coaching. I'm having a blast. We had somebody sign up, and every day this guy sends me a question, and every day I send him an answer. And I'm like, you can send me more than one. He's like, nope, just one a day. I've got a few. I'm like, or you can join me via Zoom. Nope, I'm good. So it's really handy, especially if you're across the pond. We have a lot of tools to do that. So check that out. Use the coupon code COACH when you sign up. And remember, you have a 30-day money-back guarantee. And we use Podpage for our website. If you want to check it out, try podpage.com. Now with audience surveys, and soon coming, a Podcasting 2.0 feature will be added to Podpage. Stay tuned for that. And we are live streaming right now with Ecamm. Check the show notes. It's and Ecamm was almost going to say something that I can't talk about. Not about Black Friday deals, because I can't talk about that. That would be wrong. But I like Ecamm. Yes. Glad I caught myself, because it's not the 29th yet. If you need more Jim Collison, and who doesn't, doggone it, go over to either Ask the Pod or go to homegadgetgeeks.com or theaverageguy.tv. Both doors, two ways. That's right, two ways to get hold of Jim
How is that even possible?
And is it time? Come on, mouse. I'm clicking right on the go button. Yes, so it's time for the wheel. Oh, names. Will it be Ross Brand? Will it be, there is Craig from AI Goes to College, or Randy Black from Bible Bites, Shane from Spyberry, Jody from Audio Marketing. Well, let's click that wheel and see who wins. Round and round it goes. Survey says, it is. Oh man, look at that. It's Ask Ralph. Holy cow. I thought that was Glenn. Ask Ralph. Find him at Ask Ralph.
It's thick. It's thick.
AskRalphPodcast.com. It is not only finances, but finances from a Christian perspective. Check him out, AskRalphPodcast.com. And, hey, if there we go. If this show saved you time, if it saved you money, did we save you a headache? Did we maybe make you laugh, cry, think, groan, educate, or entertain? Well, then you can be an awesome supporter. Go over to AskThePodcastCoach.com/awesome. And we deeply appreciate that, especially because I had a fun thing. I used to host my stuff on Podia. Podia is nothing wrong, but as long as Podia does everything you want it to do, it's a great choice. And then I found Zenler, so I moved to Zenler. And to make a long story short, I switched to their free plan on Podia rather than make everybody unsubscribe and then resubscribe. I'm like, no, just keep them over there. It worked. And they sent me an email that said, hey, we're closing down our free plan, yada, 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 blah, blah, blah. And no, they said they're making changes to the free plan. Well, the change was we're killing it. And so they killed it. And the one day I woke up and had about, I don't know, but they weren't paying. And that's been just a lovely experience to always read the whole email, and also maybe check your spam folder every now and then, because it had the word free in it. It went right to my spam folder. I was like, I just woke up and I was like, why did everybody leave? So yeah. So going back to, speaking of Ralph, here's my that's funny, because I said we were going to talk to him after the break, and yeah, there you go. Here's my provocative question for today. It seems the word podcast is going out of style. Should we all just start calling our creation shows so we fit on all platforms? Sure. Why not? I've said that all along. When people were like, it's not, don't say podcast because it's confusing and yada, yada, yada. And then there are other people like, it's been podcasting since 2005. Deal with it. It's a podcast. It's your show. Call it whatever you want. But yeah, I've always said, if we're going to call it anything, call it show, because everybody knows what a show is. Some people don't know what a podcast is. Some people used to call it, it's like a radio show on the internet. But if you say that today, anybody under 30 is going to go, what's a radio show? So, but I think we all know what a show is. That same thing on YouTube. I still think people on YouTube should say, welcome to the show, because it's not a podcast. And I could put on my curmudgeon hat, but we'll save that for another time. Yeah.
If you want to get Dave Jackson fired up,
just ask me what YouTube. A podcast.
How do I get my podcast on YouTube?
Yeah. Yeah. So it is what it is. Josie, go ahead.
Hold on, let me weigh in on that one real quick. I guess I agree with you in the sense that we should just call it what it needs to be called for it to be successful in the medium it is in, and not necessarily fight. If I personally don't see a trend away from the term podcast, but maybe there is. There are some circles where I think you still want to use the word podcast. I think there's other times you may want to call it a show. Brand it. This is a branding exercise, right? So brand it whatever you need to make sure the people in that space understand what you're trying to do there. Don't worry about the nomenclature from is it right or not, or do people agree on it or not. That doesn't matter, to be honest. What matters is that you're reaching your audience in the place that they're at, and they understand what you're trying to give them. That's all that really matters. Doesn't matter if a whole bunch of podcasting gurus say it works or it doesn't work, right? What matters is what's working for you. I can't.
Yeah.
And I get it. Listen, there's great podcasting advice out there. I'm not saying don't listen to anybody, because I want you to listen to us, but or I want you to listen to Dave Jackson. But you've got to really think hard and work hard in that space to make sure you understand that how the audience understands it. And it's too simple to just say, oh, it's just call it a podcast everywhere. Well, maybe, but probably not. You got to think through. We tend to oversimplify everything, and then we want to put all that information in a little tiny box, and so we're comfortable with it. And so it's not that way, right? It's not that way. Brand it in a way that that the people listening to it makes sense to them.
Well, this is what trips my trigger from Pod News. This just came out. In the U.S., YouTube is the service used most often to listen to podcasts. According to Edison Research, 31% of weekly podcast listeners age 13 plus choose YouTube as the service they use to most listen to podcasts. Spotify is 27% and Apple is 15%. And the only reason I go, well, that stat's a piece of crap now, is because there are definitely people that the whatever age group is listening to that are YouTubers and they're not podcasters. So that's the stat that I go, yeah, I don't, not that every YouTuber is not a podcast, but there are plenty over there that are just YouTubers. And we ask the audience, what do you think it is? And they said podcast, to which I say, well, I think I'm a male model. So here you go. I'm a male model. And you'd go, no, Dave, you're not. I'm like, okay, well, I think I have this piece of wood with wheels on it. It's called a skateboard. I don't think it's a skateboard. I think it's a car, because a car is what gets you to point A to point B and sometimes back. And that's what this skateboard does. So my skateboard is a car. And I go, no, Dave, that's a skateboard. So the whole well, the audience thinks it's this, so that's what it is. I'm like, no, you need to educate your audience. But in the end, though, the reason I usually don't die on this hill is because I kind of don't care, except for that one thing we just saw. When I see this, I go, no, not going to read that report anymore, because it's skewed. It's not entirely accurate. And in the end, does it really matter? So,
well, if you have a really good beat on your audience, like if you spend time talking to them, if you spend time knowing them, if you spend time working with them, you know what they want. You know what they need. You know what you need to say. I mean, Ralph just comes back and says he has clients who don't understand the name podcast. Great, you know that.
Right.
Then it moved on me where to go. But when I tell them I have a show on YouTube, they say, "Oh yeah, I check that out all the time." Awesome. So now you know. To them, you say show. But if there's others who want to say podcast, you tell them it's a podcast. Like you use the words, use the brand words or the brand terms that matter to them. Yeah, it's more work for you for sure to figure out each time you're like, okay, who am I speaking to? But knowing your audience, and if you're spending time with them, you'll know and if listen, you come across somebody and you're like, on my podcast, and they go podcast, and you go, you must watch it on YouTube. Okay, boom, you're done. And then
Yeah.
move forward with what the conversation is. Don't try not to get too hung up on that. So I think that key is know your audience, know who you're speaking to, and they'll know. I mean, guys, we have to do this across generations. We have to do
Yeah.
this across continents, as people say. I mean, certainly in the UK, there are different words and terms for things than we say here in the
Oh,
United
yeah.
States. So, yeah, we got to kind of get past that and use the right words. Use the right words. When you say pants in the UK, that means something different than when you say pants in the United States. So
Right.
don't tell them you've lost your pants,
Yeah.
because they'll laugh at you
Yeah.
as they did with me incessantly. So anyways,
Nice.
yeah.
Daniel J. Lewis, I can't trust Edison Research anymore since they corrupted their surveys. And then Justin Blackett is saying, what can Apple do to regain the podcast market? To which Randy says, have they really lost it? They're still the largest listening platform. And the key word here to podcasts, true podcast based on an RSS feed to media hosts. And Daniel says Apple's main competition is Spotify. I think Apple
Yep.
could boost the share. What I don't understand, they used to have a tab. You'd go in a podcast, it would be like, do you want to watch video or do you want to listen to audio? And we're going back a decade. And then when YouTube kind of took over, Apple just went, we'll just focus on the audio stuff. And so people think podcasts are just audio, but they can be video, and that's where things get messy. Christopher Nessie says, I'm teaching a college course, and the final project is a single podcast episode. Many of the students talk about the podcast they watch, not the podcast they listen to. Yeah, different demographics.
Know your audience, friends. Know your audience. Know who you're
Yeah.
talking to.
And then Justin's hoping that Apple would lean into some of the 2.0 features. I think they have one, which is transcripts. And let's see. Yeah, Daniel says the audacity to make a show. Just doesn't sound
It just
as
doesn't
good.
sound right. It would if we didn't know the word podcast. The one I'm struggling right now with is subscribe and follow. Because everybody changed for 1,000 years. We said subscribe. Hey, make sure you subscribe. Make sure you subscribe. Everybody's changing to follow, and I don't like that. But that's what it is. I have some of the marketing interns that come in, and the other day we were saying, okay, make sure you tell them to subscribe, and they looked at me, and they're like, "Isn't it follow?" And I'm like, "I think it's subscribe," and we had to go look it up, and it's definitely follow. And so, do those words matter? I think they do. I think getting them right is important at that point. So I've struggled with that changeover, and I just got to get it. It's follow now. That's what we do.
That changed when Apple added the ability to do private podcasts that you charge for, where you don't get any of the customer information, because they're not your customer, they're Apple's customer, and that's why I don't use that service. And everybody wants to know, especially Craig. Wait, you lost your pants?
I lost my pants.
Sounds like a kid's game. Hey, everybody. Look what Santa brought you under the tree. It's, hey, I lost my pants. Yay! Bobby lost his pants. Jimmy lost his pants. Sissy lost her pants. Yeah, so
it's like biscuits and cookies. Those are two things that are different, right? Biscuits and cookies.
Yeah.
Chips and fries. Different.
Yeah. Stag is a deer. Bonnet is the hood of the car. So all those crazy UK people. A lot of it has to do with phones, Jody says. what phones people are using, Android or Apple. It's whatever the default on the phone. Yeah, that's true. That's yeah. It's yeah, and that's where sometimes Craig said it earlier, like, and then we complicate things. It's like
No,
sometimes we,
sure.
you know,
Well, complicate or overthink. That we maybe that's the same thing, right? We spend times making things simpler, then we make
yeah.
them too simple, and then we start over complicating them. I don't know. Who knows?
Yeah.
Yeah, who knows? Wait a minute. Didn't hey we invented English in America? Didn't we? Weren't we
I
the ones who? Why are those people in the UK thinking they have something to say about the English language? We invented it.
mm, yeah. Well, here's I'm fascinated by language. I
I
really
love the
am.
silence there on your part. That was great.
But I'm
What the
fascinated.
hell is he talking about?
Like, well, I always wonder, like, if you go to the UK, you've got all sorts of like, there's difference between an Irish accent and a Scottish accent, and then the Cockney and the all, And I always wonder, like, where did the Southern accent in America? Like, why do people talk like this? I don't know. They just that's the way they sound. Get her done. Where did that come from? It's weird. So I just find language in generally just fascinating.
It
So
is great. It is, yeah, it is. The study of language is great, and I've got an editor at work who is really really good with the English language, and I'm finding the more I work with him, then I actually just check things with him all the time. Like I'll be saying something, and then I'll say a word that I didn't necessarily, I'm wondering, did I say that right? Is that the right context? And if life just came with an editor all the time when you were speaking, and it's someone who would quietly whisper in your ear, that's not the right word.
yeah.
You you would wait a minute, let me correct that. So, but that has I think that's been helping my grammar and it has been helping my spoken word by being critical about some of the words that I am saying. And I don't think that's a bad exercise, Dave. I think sometimes when we speak, well, you mentioned you being the cliche machine, and oh my gosh, listen, I am. If you are, I am not far behind you because I cliche all the time, and so it is just one of those. I think that's one of those things we can review ourselves as we speak and say, I might want to say that less.
Mm.
However, that being said, there are mannerisms of things that we use that make us us. So don't wipe out everything, don't become a robot. So I don't know. Maybe I'm
Uh,
overcomplicating it or making it too simple.
well, and a lot of it is, I think, just how you were raised, where you grew up. Like, I am amazed at how often I use the word dude. Like, oh, dude,
Oh,
it's just a dude.
yeah.
It's just part of my, that's in the top 20 of words I use. And then you get into weird things like me and my brother are, and we don't even think about it. We just do it. We have weird words because they're funny for normal things. Like, let's go get some vittles instead of food. We will both say vittles because my sister-in-law is like, you both
Oh,
had
yeah.
do this thing. She's like, I've never noticed it, but you guys substitute weird words for things that people would just say food, and you're like, let's go get some grub. And so like you
Yeah.
always do these weird, and I'm like, I don't know, it's just we always it's just what you do.
And I
So
said chow because of the military.
yeah,
I said let's get some chow. That's
yeah.
what they call it. So yeah,
So you just
yeah.
my growing up, um, a group about five friends of my friends, and my brother did the same thing with him. You had your own like Morse code kind of.
Mm-hmm.
Ours
Mm-hmm.
somehow revolved around, and it's not even a word. We just made it up. Shoom. It became a greeting. We'd be like, "Hey, shoom," and then that became Mashum because we needed something to say, and it was just like we're whatever 11, 12. You're in that nerdy phase,
Sure, sure.
and you're just like, oh, okay. And my
Hello.
and
Yeah.
my mom would just kind of like, oh, look, they're in the nerdy phase now. Um, Todd the Gator says, I've been using the new survey feature on Podpage and creating a drawing for one uh, before the holidays. Yeah, it's a great idea. I love it. Yeah, I'm all about the survey. The thing I found out, the joys of WordPress, I could not find it. I have pretty links, and then I have a redirect link, and I cannot find what controls schoolofpodcasting.com/survey. So it directs to a page where I was previously talking about a survey back in 2015, and I could not figure out how to redirect whatever is redirecting my redirect behind the scenes in WordPress. So I was just like, well, since that's where people are going when they go to schoolofpodcasting.com/survey, I'm going to have a big giant button that says click here to take the 2024 survey. It was very frustrating. I was like, ugh. So that's always fun.
I need to use Podpage more. Like there's so many good things. I mean, I'm paying for it. Why would I not? I mean, I paid because I want the forward and
yeah,
I like the microphone feedback but he's added so many cool things to it, like the survey. Why am I not using that thing? And so I need to go. Well, one is maybe I don't have the right plan, but I am paying for some of it. I need to go out there and use Podpage a little bit more. There's probably some tools I'm missing.
It's super simple. If you let me log in. If you go into, I want to say connect, because we have a couple different menus that you can go into as he's typing frantically behind the scenes, trying to make it look like he's not typing behind the scenes as he's trying to get caught up. If we share my screen, it's so funny because there's a button right in front of me that says screen. Why I go, wait, how do I share my screen again? I don't know. Maybe click on the button that says screen. So if I'm going to guess under connect, and yeah, down here, listener survey. And so all you do is you say, I want a new listener survey in the upper right-hand corner. And so I might as well make one here for Ask the Podcast Coach. So I'll call it Ask the Podcast Coach 2024. And wow, there are so many windows from Ecamm. I'm like, get out of my way. And so it says, hey, this is currently closed. And I could come down here and say, I would like to turn this on. So that's done. And then I come up here and like, what am I turning on? Well, and I would like to see this change. We turn on all the questions. I think it would be better to have them all turned off. But it's like, how often do you listen? How long have you been listening? Sure. How did you discover? That's definitely one I want to know. How soon do you typically listen to an episode? I kind of don't care. How often would you like the episodes to come out? Don't really care because we're not changing. We're weekly. Do you think each episode of Ask the Podcast Coach should be longer, shorter, or the same length? Again, maybe leave that one on because we're always 90 minutes. Do you follow the show? Sure. In general, do you think Ask the Podcast Coach is getting better, worse, or staying the same? Sure. What was your favorite episode? Nah, because nobody's going to remember that. What was your least favorite episode or guest? Now, and I'm going to turn this off because I know down here, all these ones about least favorite is covered in there. Is there anything else you would like to mention? So that's where I'm looking for like, hey, that thing with the, whatever. What platforms do you typically listen to? I can get that from my media host. Don't need it.
Yeah, but you can't tie it. If you get it here, you can tie it to answers.
All together, yeah.
Right, yeah.
Which of the following places do you ever listen? So at the home, at work, in the car? Sure. Which of the following do you ever do while listening? Sure. Don't really care, but okay. In general, what topics do you enjoy listening to on podcasts? Sure. Besides Ask the Podcast Coach, actually, how many other podcasts do you listen to? I want to know that. What other podcasts do you listen to? That's great because you can then network with those people. What's your favorite podcast? One would think if you're asking on the Ask the Podcast Coach, maybe not. Again, could give you a place. What services are you on? Does this have Blue Sky? It does not have Blue Sky. Oh, I'll have to tell Brendan. The world is on fire. We're not listening to Blue Sky.
Didn't they just invent that thing?
Yeah.
Isn't that new? Okay.
I like this one. How old are you? As opposed to a date range. Which gender are you? Which of the following best describes you? How much money do you make? What's the highest level of education? That's typical. And then what custom questions should we ask, Jim?
Who do you like better, Dave or Jim?
Who do you like better, Dave? Oops, I might have spelled it Dave or Jim. How about this one? Who was your favorite guest co-host?
Oh, that's a good one.
Yeah.
That's
I
good.
think it's about it. Because again, if you have too many questions,
It's a long survey. It's
that is
already a long survey.
yeah, I'm gonna say, talking to the survey guy working for Gallup,
Yeah, it's a
he's
little too
probably like,
long.
yeah, we probably should have quit about 10 questions ago. So if you go to askthepodcastcoach.com/survey, the survey you've requested has been deleted. No, it hasn't.
What?
That's not good. Hold on. Did I click? Oh, I didn't finish out the rest of it. Uh,
Oh.
I can send people to thing. I can say, hey, thanks so much, which it's doing. If I wanted to give them a file, I could do that. We don't have a response. I just want to make sure yep, okay. And everything's been saved. Let me go to the bottom and click save. Please don't embarrass me. That would be bad. Plus, okay, you guys ready? Drum roll, please. No. Is it going to the right? Hold on. AskThePodcastCoach.com. I wonder if this is because I'm Dave from Podpage.
Or did you do a survey already with that same name?
That's what it is. I have it. Tell him what he's won. I guarantee you. When I go in here, when I go into settings and short links, I'm going to, because it's pointing at Google Docs, and I'm like, what? There it is. Look at tell him what he's won. Because I'm here to tell you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, that also answers my question. Like if somebody wants to do this. So yes, delete that. Please. Now let's go back to thepodcastcoach.com. Because I was like, wait, what? Survey. See how long it takes. There we go. And I have a typo in the name, so I can fix that too. But it looks very much like Typeform.
That's askthepodcastcoach.com/survey. Right?
Yep.
Okay.
So if you have any ideas or comments, it's now live. And next week or, over the weeks, I don't know how long I'm going to leave it up, but we will go and look at that. I have run out of room on my hard drive. That's interesting. I just got that
on your Mac?
On my Mac. That's because I have a lot of Podpage videos that I put on my hard drive. So I need to, they're on YouTube now. I need to throw those in Backblaze and go to
a couple things on surveys before we wrap here. One is, and by the way, I work for Gallup, but I'm not a survey expert. Okay. There's a few things I've learned doing this. So one, we mentioned shorter's better. Yeah. Two, Dave, I wanted to highlight, you said something in this that's super, super important. You were like, you read the question and then you're like, I'm not going to change. And so you didn't ask the question. Like it was like frequency. Well, we're not going to do this. We could ask the question, but we're not going to change. Don't ask the question. Like I know it sounds pretty basic. There are folks who are like, oh, I want to get a whole bunch of data for data's sake. And one, if you ask too many questions, people will stop. Two, if you're not going to do anything with it, they'll never answer another survey from you again. So make sure you're keeping it reasonable. You got some actionable items that are in there. I would rather ask 4 surveys a year that are short than 1 survey a year that is super long. You'll get more up-to-date information, and then really think about the topics that you want to change in what you're doing, and then kind of hone it down to that. I kind of thinking from a Gallup perspective, I'd love to be able to get a set of standard questions that I ask all the time that has some measurements to them. These some engagement measurements into them, and then measure them over time. So I can say, am I engaging my customers more or less? And I never thought about that in the terms of what are some standard questions I could ask. I mean, I'll think about that. Some standard questions I could ask to help with that engagement over time. That's really where it becomes key. Just knowing the answers are one thing, but knowing them and then knowing some trends on them and having action items around them is super important.
Yeah, and most of those questions came from the book, The Audience is Listening, A Little Guide to Building a Big Podcast by Tom Webster. And yeah, Jim, you said something that's like, I want to hit that so hard. Do not ask your audience for their opinion if you're not going to do anything with it. They used to drive me nuts. And like you said, they'll never answer a survey. And you're right. What if we'd put that question out and they said, we don't need to ask the podcast coach on a weekly basis. How about every other week? I'm not going to know that. I doubt they would answer that, but you never know. And so good insights, Sir Jim. Well done.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Thank you.
So, what is coming up on Home Gadget Geeks?
Yeah, so I spent some time with me. I did a solo, even though you said I don't like doing solo. That's not my preferred method, but spent some time kind of updating the community. We've had a lot of things. I've had a lot of things going on recently, and so I thought it'd just be a good idea to get them all caught up. So me getting caught up a little bit on the M4. If you want to hear that, it's not available yet, but it will be available a little bit later today for those listening live out at homegadgetgeeks.com.
Yeah, I know when I just switched from my PC to the M1 Mac Mini, Camtasia was way, way, way speedier on,
For sure.
so, but
Yeah.
my PC was
Yeah,
pretty
yeah.
old. On the School of Podcasting, I think I am going to take that article on media hosts. I'm going to dig a little deeper, even though I dug pretty deep already, just to go into that, it's one of those things I've talked about before, but this is where we talk about approaching it from a different angle. So I'm going to go with here are the features, and then I'm probably going to make a spreadsheet that might be a giveaway, kind of lead magnet, where like, here are the features, here are the media hosts, and then add who has the most, kind of make it easier, because it's the way it is now, but you're kind of like, it's not easy to consume data. So I think as I'm sitting here pondering it, I'm like, So thanks to the chat room, thanks to Mark over at podcastbranding.co and Dan over at basedonatruestorypodcast.com. Don't forget, the show is brought to you by the School of Podcasting.com. Use the coupon code COACH when you sign up for either a monthly or yearly subscription. And if you're wondering, is Dave going to have a Black Friday deal? Nope. Don't do that. I did that 2 years, and 2 years went, yep, not going to do it anymore. And maybe we'll talk about that next week. But speaking of next week, everybody have a good Thanksgiving. We will be back next Saturday with another episode of Ask the Podcast Coach.